We're talking college football here on the Our Lads Football Network, Our Lads Football YouTube channel. You can also catch some of these shows over on ProLine. That is an old but a new channel that you want to check out from Jim Feist, one of the legendary handicappers of all time. And of course, somebody that's been hanging around this gentleman, another one of the best handicappers that the sports world has ever seen, Marc Lawrence. And Marc, good to have you on each week again. And I know we've missed doing this the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we have, Greg, but it's nice to be back in the saddle this week. And it's really getting to be a big time in the world of college football as we're getting closer and closer to the college football playoff.
Yeah, matter of fact, we can, speaking of the playoffs, the rankings came out. So we're going to take a look at that right now. Let me see if I can get those rankings up. There they are. And it's kind of interesting to see 4 of the 5 top teams are from the Big Ten. Now, that's not going to last because Indiana is going to play Ohio State. But other than that, you could still see Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State up in that area. Not that this is going to matter because, again, only you're going to have the conference champions are all going to take one of those 4 spots. So, therefore, like Ohio State would end up, say, the 5th. And then you would have maybe Penn State the 6th and so forth. I guess the big question is going to be if Indiana loses to Ohio State, will they still be able to make the playoffs because they did not have a tough schedule? And last week went up against Michigan in a heavy line, and it actually was your college football dog of the year over at Playbook, and that came through. And they were very lucky to hold on to defeat Michigan when that game ended.
You know, I think the same scenario would develop if Indiana were to play in the Big Ten championship game undefeated and lose that game. If they were, I'm saying it's a big if, they could still possibly play a Florida State scenario that happened last year. But the only reason Florida State didn't make the playoffs was because they lost their quarterback.
True.
But Indiana has had their quarterback out for a game or 2 this year. Or if Indiana loses this football game, I think they're dead in the water regardless. So Indiana has to win, be undefeated at least going into the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, and that's because of the SEC. As you can see, all those other SEC teams in there. And let's start off in the SEC. We're going to round out. That's what we're going to do here on this video. We're going to go through the standings. And look, you got all of these teams here. You have 8 teams from Tennessee to LSU divided by just a game and a half, which would lead you to believe that they're all in it because we don't have any idea how the mathematical equations are going to work out. I'm only going to guess, of course, it's going to have to do with rankings if you get into a multiple team tiebreaker kind of situation. And that's why I just don't think Missouri or LSU stands much of a chance. So really, from Alabama to Tennessee, those 6 teams still have a chance to reach the SEC championship game. And even if they don't reach the championship game, they still have a chance for the postseason. 6 teams are not going to make it from the SEC in the playoffs, though. So you're going to see one of these teams, at least one of these teams, not even make the postseason. And that's kind of hard to believe. I think most people would just immediately, they'd zero in on this and go, oh, it's probably going to be Texas A&M or maybe even Tennessee if they lose to Georgia this week. But I don't know if it's going to be that easy.
I don't think it's going to be that easy at all, Greg, but I think it'll take care of itself, just given the fact that if any of these 2-loss teams obviously suffers a 3rd loss, they're history. They're gone, and they won't be in the playoff picture. So, that will take care of itself. If Georgia loses to Tennessee this week, adios Bulldogs. If Texas A&M loses to Texas, A&M is out of it too. So, only the strong survive, especially in the world of college football. So we'll see which of these 2 or 3 or 4 teams make it from the SEC.
Yeah, and also we got to keep in mind that just ball-wise, I mean, I can't believe Kentucky. I mean, I didn't even realize they needed to win 3 games to go to a bowl. They've had a good season, and yet they're 3-6. So, and look at Auburn. We know Auburn's capable of upsetting either Texas A&M or Alabama. That's who they're going to wrap up the season with. They have a great defense. And I know Malzahn's having a tough season, but the fact that, Freeze is having a tough season, but the fact of the matter is that they're just a quarterback away from being a dangerous team next year. They just have nothing from the quarterback spot. And once they figure that out, they're going to be just fine. And I know they're going after this big-time recruit, So if they can get him, they might have even already gotten him. I think they're going to be just fine. Oklahoma, look, I don't even know. Look, if Oklahoma gets to the playoffs it gets to the bowl or not, I think that needs to be it, though. They got to find a new coach. Don't you think Venables is out?
Yeah, I don't know why on God's green earth they gave him the thumbs up, and wished him well, and he's going to continue to be our head coach. That's a kiss of death is what it really is. Because if he makes any mistake from moving here forward, he's obviously good as gone. And his body of work this football season has been pathetic.
Yeah.
I think this is a bad year for Oklahoma, and I think Venables will be out by the end of this football season.
The way they lost that game against Missouri, that should have been fireable as it is.
Yes.
So Florida, I think it's academic now. They're more than likely they'll move on from Napier. So that'd be upset. Arkansas could be in a good situation on Saturday. I only say that because of the fact that they win. They're in a bowl. And they'll get some more attention. I just would not be surprised if they pulled off the upset. We know this is what I'm happy about, seeing Texas, Arkansas in the same division again. These are the old school rivalries, the old days of college football when these two teams, I forget, they were in the
Southwest Conference.
Southwest Conference.
Yeah, it was the Sure We Cheat Conference, is that what they called it.
All right. So, yeah. And this might be the team that deserves Beamer probably deserves more credit than just about any coach in college football of what he's done with the South Carolina football team this year. They're getting no recognition of how good this team has played this season.
I think, look at his 3 losses, Greg. I don't have it in front of me here, but he's lost to some very good football teams. South Carolina has.
Yep.
And they could arguably, by season's end, end up being the best 3-loss team in the country. Not going to get them anywhere. They're not going to make the college football playoff as a 3-loss team, but it'll move them into the upper echelon of the SEC at least.
Okay, let's go to the Big Ten. And again, here you got Indiana at the top, and yet they still have work to do. And like you said, and some other people might feel the same way, that if they don't beat Ohio State, they won't even make the playoffs. So we'll see whether or not that comes true. But you got to believe there's definitely going to be 3 teams from the Big Ten. That's more than likely going to happen, unless Penn State loses to Minnesota. I mean, that's it. Minnesota still is a capable team. They're at home. That's going to be next week. But Penn State's got 2 other easy games, Maryland and Purdue. So it looks good for Penn State. But as far as the rest of the conference, it's been a pretty down year.
Yeah, you can draw a line between the top 4 teams in this conference, Greg, and rule the others out right now. Because beyond the top 4 teams in the conference, Indiana, Oregon, the Buckeyes, and Penn State, everybody else has at least 3 or 4 losses, and they're not going to go anywhere. So we're going to see 4 teams from the Big Ten Conference in the college football playoff.
And as far as the games that I think that are the most interesting, look, USC, they're just going to have to – they have some big games they have to finish up with in order to go bowling. So, as a matter of fact, they end their season against Notre Dame.
Yeah, just to become bowl eligible. Right, exactly.
And next week, they play red-hot UCLA. And remember, we talked last week off the air about how much I liked what was going on at UCLA, and then they upset Iowa. They're just red hot right now. But that game against Washington tomorrow night, that's going to be a big game because Washington only has 1 more game left after this. And that is a very tough game. I forget who they're playing. They're playing like a team, might be Oregon, I think. So
yes, they are. A big double revenge game for Oregon is what it'll be, yes.
So then there you go. You get a situation where there's no way Washington's beating Oregon. So if they don't beat UCLA, red hot UCLA, they're not going to a bowl this year. And and that's surprising because I think Washington's a bowl team, but it just shows you how much difficult it is from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, And the other thing with Washington too is the whole travel craziness, because this is like the 4th straight week that they're either going to be West Coast or East Coast. And that has to take a little bit of a toll considering UCLA has been sitting at home for the past week. So, yeah, but there are a lot of trends, though, that say Washington's to play this week. That's what scares me about the game, especially since they need the game a lot more than UCLA. UCLA still has 2 more games. They could win those games. But that's the scenario that's interesting because if let's say Washington wins, then UCLA must win their next 2, and they're playing USC next week, who must win before they have to face Notre Dame. So it's a lot of intrigue there.
Yeah, there is. The 2 LA schools, Southern Cal and UCLA, both with 4 wins in the season. If what happens this week, it ends up being Southern Cal does not win. They're going to end up having to win their last 2 games at UCLA and against Notre Dame.
Yep.
That could be a tough call for USC. And you mentioned UCLA. It would sort of be a shame if they didn't make the bowls, because after a real slow start, they're playing as good as anybody right now inside the conference. I don't know if they'll be able to sustain that or not, but the pressure will be squarely on them. They've won and covered 2 in a row, so that's not earth-shattering. But the fact of the matter is they're playing their best football. If they beat Southern Cal, they'll have to beat Fresno State, their last football game, of which they'll be a double-digit favorite. So a lot happens this weekend between these 2 football teams, no doubt about it.
Yeah, UCLA, actually, USA's won 3 straight up and against the spread.
Yes.
6-1 against the spread in their last 7 games. So they are red hot.
They're hot. Yes, they are.
And Deshaun Foster, boy, does he deserve so much credit. Everybody thought it was ridiculous. Deshaun Foster? I mean, that's going to be a disaster. Are you kidding me? They just hired basically a guy that's been playing football the last few years. He's going to be the head coach of a top program. Well, he's getting the last laugh because he's done a tremendous job.
Well, it was a disaster to start the season, 1-5.
Yeah.
But, like you said, 3 wins in a row right now changes that whole dynamic.
Okay. Meanwhile, let's move on and we'll go to the ACC. And I know we haven't talked a lot about SMU, but that's because they really haven't had a tough schedule. So that's the thing. That's a knock against SMU. And let's keep in mind, just a few weeks ago, they had that game where they had 5 or 6 turnovers against Duke and still found a way to win the game, which they had no right doing. But they're right in it. And Clemson is the team now and Miami that are battling it out. So you got those 3 teams at the top. Only 2 are going to get into the championship game. Miami, Clemson. What about Clemson? Because Clemson actually is in a tough game on Saturday against a Pitt team that is reeling from 2 straight losses. But the key for that game is going to be whether Eli Holstein is going to play. It's also Pittsburgh's home finale. And I don't know. I just got a feeling Pitt might be able to win that game. And I like the fact that you're getting 10 and almost 3-1, but that's only if the kid Holstein plays.
Yeah, you're getting 10 because Clemson's playing well and Pittsburgh's not right now. Pittsburgh started out the season, I believe, 7-0. The wheels have come off a little bit here on them lately. But the truth of the matter is SMU is going to be favored in each of their last 3 football games. They'll likely win all 3 of those football games. They'll end up the season 8-0 in the conference and 11-1 overall. SMU will be the kingpin in the ACC.
Yeah, that game next week against Virginia could be tricky. Again, because it's a road game and Virginia's shown that they're a little bit capable. And you know what? The interesting thing is the Boston College game coming up this week. This is a rematch of the bowl game, the Fenway Bowl last year.
Yep.
These 2 teams were not division conference opponents last year. And Boston College was a 13-point dog, and they upset SMU in that bowl game. But we all know that was one of those bowl games where one team came to play and the other team didn't.
Exactly right. 2 years ago it was.
Okay.
But it's still fresh in the mind of everybody at SMU, because of the big upset that occurred in the football game. So I don't think they'll have problem with Boston College, and I don't think they'll have problem against either of the other 2 teams. As you said, Virginia could be a sticky situation.
Miami's in good shape now because they play Wake Forest and Syracuse, so they should be okay there. So it is looking – I don't know. I'm getting a feeling right now that we might be seeing Miami and SMU, actually. I don't know. Clemson. Is Clemson done in the ACC? Because I know they've got that South Carolina game coming up, and they may have a FCS opponent next.
Who's that? Clemson? Let me take a quick look.
Yeah. This is it. This is their last ACC game. So if Clemson does not get upset by Pitt, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Again, if SMU runs the table, then I guess it's going to come down to the rankings, whether it's Clemson or Miami.
Yeah, they've got the Citadel and South Carolina behind this. So this, like you say, is their final ACC game. So, really it's sort of in their hands right now for Clemson. They have to win this football game.
And Miami right now under that scenario is in much better shape. They're ranked 12th. Clemson is ranked 17th, as we can see here. So Miami is definitely the team that holds the cards. And since they're not facing a tough schedule, it's kind of looking like it might be Miami against SMU in the championship game.
It does. That's exactly what it looks like to me. That's the way I see it. Clemson filling out the 3rd slot there. It's too bad because Louisville started out well, hit a rut, and is playing good football right now, but too little too late for Louisville.
Yeah.
They're 2 losses behind SMU right now, and they will not make up that ground.
Yeah, their only losses were competitive losses to good teams.
Yes.
But they just couldn't win enough of them, and that's what it's all about. Meanwhile, Virginia Tech still needs a win. Keep in mind, they've been banged up with their two best offensive players have not played the last 2 weeks when they've lost. So that's why Virginia Tech, they had a hot streak going. Virginia, Boston College, North Carolina all need one win for bowl eligibility, just like NC State, California as well. So it looks like there'll be a lot of teams bowl eligible in the ACC. But the biggest surprise of all, I mean, wow, Florida State. Who would have thought that this could happen? I mean, I could have easily seen, they lost all their big players. It was such a dramatic turnaround from nothing to a potential playoff in one season. So you figured, they're going to take a step back. Maybe they win 4 or 5 games. It wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world, but this is just shocking.
Shocking beyond belief. I believe it's a 12-team conference, and they're dead last.
Yes.
And not even close. Their football games, they're just getting destroyed, blown away in the stats. So that obviously something's not right there, and that spillover from last year obviously took effect this football season here. And I think it's also put the head coach in peril, if you will. It's strange how you go from potentially coach of the year one year to out of the job the next football season. But that's how bad it's been at Florida State.
Big 12, and what a crazy season it's been in the Big 12, because these teams here could have been first-place teams, and these teams up here were last-place teams.
You're right about that. Yeah,
before the season began, and it flipped. So
it did a complete flip. Exactly right.
How crazy is that? So BYU, they're in the best shape. Being undefeated, they got 2 games on everybody else. They've got a huge game coming up with Kansas. You can check out a video that Mark did. He's got a pick on the game, so look for that video. We'll have a link in the description where you can find out where that video is. BYU will be also at Arizona State, another one of these hot teams, and they'll end the season at home against Willie Fritz and the red-hot Houston Cougars.
Yep.
So BYU better keep playing good football, because none of these games that they're going to be ending the season with are going to be easy for him.
No, and Willie Fritz, he's got 4 wins. He can smell a bowl bid here if you continue to keep playing well. It's ironic. These top 2 teams, BYU and Colorado, I think in the Big Ten preseason poll, I know BYU was the 11th choice. I think Colorado was the 9th or 10th choice. And on the bottom 2 teams, Utah and Oklahoma State. Utah was the number 1 pick in the conference. Oklahoma State, the number 2 pick in the conference. So It's been really rather topsy-turvy. I can't believe what Oklahoma State, I don't know what happened to that football team. They had a ton of returning talent coming back, and they haven't even been close this football season.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder whether or not the whole incident we heard about and we talked about early in the season when their Doak-winning running back caught drinking and driving, and that was a little bit of a distraction early on. But, look, Gundy's been there for a long time, and you just wonder whether or not after a season like this where he just says it's time. So I don't know.
It could be. I mean,
we'll see. Meanwhile, Arizona plays Houston, by the way, this week, and both teams need wins for bowl eligibility. Arizona coming off a bye, so maybe they could get going again. But I just think it's too late for Arizona. Kansas is the interesting team to watch. They need to win 3 games, but I would not be shocked. We're both big Lance Leipold fans, and it would not be surprising if Kansas can pull off one of those dramatic, win your last 4 to get bowl eligibility kind of deals. They could definitely see that happening with Kansas.
Well, they could do that. The number 4 pick in the conference to begin this football season. So, again, the talent's there. The coaching is there. The bottom line here is, can they win these games on the road? Because we know they're how really, really strong they are. They're at BYU this week, and they close out the season at Baylor. So can they win both of those football games? That's the key question.
And Baylor needs another win for bowl eligibility. And Dave Aranda saved his job. And it was a great move that he decided to take over play calling duties this season. That's worked out perfectly. Quarterback play has been so much better this season than the last couple of seasons. That saved them. They're on a 3-game win streak, so they're probably going bowling. So, these are the other teams here looking for bowl. Central Florida has been one of the most disappointing teams. Gus Malzahn's had a rough time. Got one of the best running backs in the country, but it's not been good enough for Central Florida. All right, let's now move on to the group of 5, starting with the AAC. And again, what a tremendous season it's been for the Service Academy teams in this conference, Army and Navy. As you can see, they're 2 out of the 3 top teams, and 2 of these teams match up on Saturday, Tulane and Navy. This is a big one. I just think Tulane's too tough for Navy. Tulane continues to be, even without Willie Fritz, look, they wound up with the Troy head coach, so they got a good one. And they've got an exciting redshirt freshman quarterback, Mensa. I think in 3 years, he's going to be looked at as a first, second round draft pick. They got a talented running back. So this is still a very talented team, even with Willie Fritz leaving. That's why they're where they are. So I kind of like Tulane to win that one. And the way it looks, it might be Tulane against Army, maybe in the championship game, as long as Tulane beats Navy. But if Navy pulls off the upset, then we're still got the Army-Navy possibility.
What's ironic here is Tulane's got the big offense. Army's got a really staunch defense. And Tulane has the best point differential in the conference here. And I agree with you. I think it will be Tulane and Army. And I think Tulane will dispose of Navy this week as well. But how nice of a season has it been to see Army-Navy perform as well as they have? And we get to see it one more time at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, because Army has, if you look at their schedule right now, they have next week, they got to bye, next week, Notre Dame. And that's not a conference game. Yep. So if they lose their first game against Notre Dame, it's not a big deal, because then they'll wrap up with Texas San Antonio, very disappointing season. They get them at home. That should be a win. And that would pretty much clinch their chance in the championship game. But again, it's weird because they're playing Navy on the 14th of December, and I would get the championship game. Isn't it supposed to be the week before? I mean, how does that? No, I guess it's the week of or the week after. I don't know how that works, but it's usually very unusual. It's usually a situation where you're not expecting Army and Navy to potentially be playing back-to-back weeks, but I don't think that's going to happen anyway.
No, I don't think it will. It's not going to shake out that way. It looked like it was a good chance, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. So again, I don't know when the AAC championship game is, but I just always thought it was like the week after, which would have been the week before this game against Army and Navy. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but I guess we'll worry about that if there's an upset. All right. Meanwhile, again, East Carolina fired their coach, so they're all of a sudden a hot team right now. So they look pretty good for a bowl. So does North Texas. South Florida and the rest of these teams have work to do. And nothing else here, really. Florida Atlantic is the biggest disappointment, just like Florida State. Tom Herman, who would have thought that they'd be at the bottom?
Yeah, I know. That's been really a disappointing hire. A lot was expected from him. He had big-time credentials, and they felt really, really pleased, like they stole something when they hired him, but it's been nothing but downhill for this football program since. They just can't recruit, Greg. They're in too fertile of a country down here in the country, and there's so many other good teams that are in the state of Florida that just pilfer away all this talent. You got Florida, Miami of Florida, Florida State. It's very, very difficult for Florida Atlantic to compete.
By the way, I just double checked, and the AAC championship game is on December 6th.
And when is Army Navy?
The week after.
Yeah. Wow.
So how do they figure that out? Because that's a conference game. That would matter, but I guess they're not counting it.
Yeah,
so
it is a conference game, but they're not going to count it. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something about that.
And there could be a lot of handicapping intrigue in that too, depending upon what happens in that championship game. If Army is in that championship game and they're undefeated and they lose, they could be really flat against Navy. If they win, Navy will come with everything they've got to pull the rug on them.
I don't know. So I can't imagine Army being flat against Navy, but it would be.
If they lose to Navy, who knows, right?
Yeah, right. All right, Mountain West and Boise and Colorado State are the only undefeated, but there's still work to be done, and that's because I think we might have an upset this week. I'm looking at San Jose State. I think this could be one of those games that catches Boise. They haven't had one of these games really all season. Even against UNLV, yeah, it was a close game, but they were in control. And we might still see them in the championship game, another rematch, if it breaks that way. But San Jose State, there's a lot of trends that really say San Jose State. Here's one. They're 16-2-1 against the spread. Again, this is
Wow.
against the spread, not winning. During the regular season, when they come off a double-digit ATS win, and they're 2-0 in that same trend this year. 16-2-1. So you're getting about 13, 14 points if you want to go that route. Also, San Jose State 13-1 against the spread as conference dogs of 8 or more.
Yep.
So I think they're a really good spread team this week, but I'm going to roll the dice on them to win the game outright. They're 4-1 on the money line. Colorado State, meanwhile, great job by Jay Norville. They struggled early on this season, and people were wondering why they were struggling because they were picked to be a top echelon team this year. And now they're playing their best football. Unfortunately, they lost their star wide receiver a few weeks ago. They're still winning, but it's kind of hard for me to believe that they're going to be able to win a conference championship without their best player.
Yeah, and the fact that they've allowed more points than they've scored this year, yet they're sitting here right now nose and nose with Boise State. Imagine, like you say, if San Jose State pulls the rug out on Boise, Colorado State wins. They're the top team inside this conference here, and they're barely plus in the point differential.
And UNLV, they will be playing at San Jose State next week. So we'll see if San Jose State, I guess based on this, San Jose State has still a little bit of a shot to maybe get in. Colorado State, meanwhile, they're undefeated, as you can see, as far as their schedule is concerned. They are going to be hosting Wyoming, and then they are at Fresno, and then host Utah State. So, by the way, Wyoming, keep an eye on this kid. He's a redshirt freshman by the name of Caden Anderson, and he is going to be the best quarterback prospect Wyoming's had since Josh Allen. I'm not saying he's Josh Allen. I'm just saying they've had a lot of quarterback issues there since Josh Allen left, but they've got a good one here, and Caden Anderson is someone to keep an eye on. And Wyoming's beaten Colorado State 3 consecutive years, so we'll see if they can maybe pull it off here against a red-hot Colorado State team that's won 5 of their last 6 and covered 6 straight games. All right, let's go to the Sun Belt. And here you got division still. And the way this is looking right now, and I've liked Georgia Southern all year, so I'm not going to change there. And how can you not be impressed with the job that Michael DeSormo has done? It's been a few years. They haven't really done much since Napier left, but finally DeSormo's put together a heck of a football team this year.
What Louisiana? Yes, exactly. Only 1 loss in the football season here, and taking everybody apart as they played. So they look to me to be the team to beat in the conference here right now. I know, like you say, Georgia Southern gets their due. Job well done, as it usually is for this football program. But they've tasted defeat 3 times this year, and I think it'd be a really tall task for them to take Louisiana down in the championship game.
Yeah, they only have 1 loss in the conference, as you can see, Georgia, because the other losses were against Mississippi and Boise State.
Yeah, how about that, huh?
Yeah, but that was a blowout loss to Old Dominion. That was a very surprising result. But keep in mind, too, it was a week after they had upset James Madison. So maybe a little bit of a hangover for Georgia Southern in that one. I still think Georgia Southern's a team to beat. They do not play Marshall because they already played Marshall and they beat them by a point. So they've got the tiebreaker there. So it's looking good for Georgia Southern, and maybe we'll see a Georgia Southern Louisiana. By the way, I like Louisiana this week. They're a 7-point favorite against South Alabama, and like you said, they've been blowing everybody out. So I think that's not a bad line.
No, it's relatively cheap for as talented and as good of a football team as Louisiana is coming to this football game here. South Alabama, the only concern I have is they have 4 wins. They'll be fighting desperately, scratching and clawing to make a bowl bid. That would be my only reservation.
Okay, so that's the Sun Belt. Other than that, Louisiana Monroe is probably one of the better stories. First-year head coach, 1 game away from going to their 2nd bowl in the history of the program. That was in 2012. So they've got to win 1 more game to get there. And let's see who they're going to be playing. Louisiana Monroe. Their remaining games are against, they're playing Auburn this week, so forget that. But they got 1 good chance. That's next week at Arkansas State. So after that, they host their rivals, Louisiana, to end the season.
Yeah, well, don't chalk up a loss to Monroe right now because it is their huge rival and anything can happen and has happened in that series.
You're right.
So it'll just depend upon the condition of Monroe and what their need is going into that game.
Okay, let's take a look at the MAC. And boy, I've been saying it for the last couple of years and it's finally coming true. Bowling Green. My Bowling Green Falcons are finally at the top of the MAC. Miami is also, look, they had a tough start to the season, but most of that was non-conference games. Once they got into the conference, they've been on a nice roll. Ohio's Ohio. They just win. That's all they do. I like the program. The head coach Taylor. I think he's going to be I think he's got the Western Michigan program headed in the right direction. Toledo had the big win over Mississippi State, but they haven't done much else this year. Northern Illinois had the big win over Notre Dame, and surprisingly has not done better than that. So it's looking good right now for maybe I don't. Ohio has a big quarterback issue because we know their quarterback is playing right now for undefeated Indiana. So that's a big issue. The guy who replaced them is not very talented. So that's why their offense hasn't been as explosive. So I don't know. I think we're looking at maybe a Bowling Green Miami championship game possibility.
Yeah, that would be really nice. Two established programs inside the MAC conference here, both playing some really good football, especially on the defensive side for both teams here. I would love to see that matchup. Ohio U is still a tough out. There's no question about that. But I think those two teams, Miami and Bowling Green, would hold the most intrigue for me.
Now, here's the interesting thing. The end of the regular season, the final game is Bowling Green hosting Miami.
How about that?
So the loser may be eliminated. Ohio does play Toledo. So that's, Toledo will be favored in that one. But it's possible we might see Bowling Green and Miami where the loser still gets in to the MAC championship game and has a rematch.
Week. It could well be because that's just how the cards may fall. I like that.
And then we have, rounding it out, Conference USA and Western Kentucky. A lot of people have been talking about, of course, Liberty, but then as soon as they lost to Kennesaw State, the wheels have fallen off. Sam Houston, we talked about them at the beginning of the season as a sleeper team to keep an eye on. Historically, a very productive team in the FCS. They're showing themselves this year. But Jacksonville State got up to a slow start, and now they're red hot again. Rich Rod having a fantastic job. He's just been a really good coach, of course, for this program there. They had a dramatic win, Hail Mary win last week. Even though they missed the extra point, they won in overtime against Louisiana Tech. But it does look like Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky, that they have been the best two teams in this conference. But the problem is we're going right back to what we just talked about in the MAC, because Western Kentucky will host Jacksonville State in the final game of the regular season.
Well, what's intriguing to me in this Western Kentucky Louisiana Tech matchup this particular weekend, Louisiana Tech isn't getting a lot of love from very many people. But take a look at the stats inside their stats. Won just 3 games this year. They're not going anywhere. But look inside their stats here. They won the yards in both of their last 2 losses. And on the flip side, on the other side of the coin here, Western Kentucky won their last game but got beat in the stats. That's called a double stat inside-out reversal here. Look for Louisiana Tech to give Western Kentucky trouble because Western Kentucky's got Jacksonville State breathing down their shoulder.
Yeah, I actually liked Louisiana Tech last week. They were the 3-1 on the money line, getting 10 from Jacksonville State. And exactly like you said, I thought they weren't getting enough respect. Keep this in mind. Louisiana Tech has lost all 3 of their overtime games this year.
Wow.
That's the difference between 3-6 and possibly 6-3.
No question about it. Now knowing that if they were to pull the rug out here, that means they would need 2 more wins to end their football season. And who knows that all that confidence that would move forward, those close call losses and knocking off Western Kentucky, you might find Louisiana Tech knocking on a bowl door.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they're playing one of those second to last regular season games against an SEC team.
Arkansas.
Yeah. So not that we've seen crazier things.
Yeah, we have.
But yeah, it's not looking good there for Louisiana Tech. And that's unfortunate with 3 overtime losses. So, and then just to throw in Notre Dame, of course. By the way, Jim Mora Jr. has done a fantastic job with UConn. And their schedule has been easy. It's been cake. Matter of fact, I think they're on the road this week for the first time since September, I believe. Wow. They have been on home forever. So they've had one of those very easy schedules because of the whole way that everything's worked out with all the teams moving from conference to conference, and they've been one of the beneficiaries. But still, they've played and won games to show you that they're worthy of a bowl. But Notre Dame is the big team, the big question mark. because they've also had a pretty easy schedule when it's all said and done, but they do end the season against USC, and that could knock them out of a potential playoff situation if USC can upset Notre Dame.
I agree with you. I think it's a great job Jim Moore has done with this football program here. They were always amongst the dregs in the world of college football. They're not any longer. A little bit similar, the same to UMass, not quite to the level that UConn has moved themselves up to. So it's nice to see these bottom-rung football teams finally making some noise. And tip of the hat, like I say, to Jim Moore, a great job, well done. And as we called out on our podcast, their last 3 games, UConn has won their game and pushed the point spread in all 3 games.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes,
Push.
Yes.
And, I wonder what Jim Moore is, one of those coaches that you got to figure is going to get looked at.
Oh, for sure he is.
Yeah. Does he, I would guess that's what he wants. I don't know if he wants to build UConn into a football program, but,
I still haven't figured out, Greg, if this is the Jim Moore that used to coach at UCLA or now it's Jim. Why is he using Jim L. Mora? Is that what's the differentiator there? Why he's using
I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want the junior for some reason.
Maybe that could well be. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good point. I don't know why he's doing that. But anyway, Notre Dame will end the season this week, home against Virginia. Then Army. That game, by the way, is going to be at Yankee Stadium, and then at USC. So not easy teams, but still, that Notre Dame Army game should be intriguing, though.
That'd be very intriguing. Notre Dame facing that bull rush attack of Army, having Southern Cal waiting on deck next week. And, Notre Dame envisions themselves as being a playoff team. They're going to have to win all their football games to do just that. But that Army game, I'm with you. I think that'll be a really, really a must-watch football game.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up. We are going to be back and talk more about the way that the standings are going to really crunch up. We'll have more teams go bowl eligible and so forth. We'll have more videos, including an update on the rankings and how they've looked this past week. Of course, they come out every Tuesday. Still a lot of football to be played, believe it or not. Because there's 12 teams now in the playoffs, so there's a lot of fighting and for positioning and all that stuff. Just get to the playoffs. That's all you have to do. Just like the NFL, just get to the playoffs, especially this year, because there's so much parity now. Oregon is the only team that looks like they may be capable of being like a power team, like maybe we'll run the table. But you even get a feeling that even Oregon is going to be susceptible if they have to win 3 big games in a row.
Well, I think Oregon's going to have their hands full this weekend against Wisconsin, personally.
Really?
Wisconsin's a very, very good underdog. Luke Fickell is very, very good in this particular role. They've been on this major role, has Oregon, but, they've got a big, big double revenge affair with Washington coming up. And they were taken out twice by Washington last year, so their focus might not be in the right spot this particular weekend. I do like Wisconsin plus the points there.
Wow. Yeah, that would be that. You're right, because that could be a game where if it's in the second half and it's close, then you start to, not that, look, Oregon's been in some close games this year and they can handle the pressure, but still, Wisconsin's more than capable of giving them a scare if everything goes right.
I think so too.
If Oregon is looking ahead.
I agree, 100%.
Like you said. Okay, so that'll wrap it up. Don't forget, look in the link in the description where you can find out how to reach Mark and for a variety of reasons, including newsletter. And even though it's late in the season, this is still something that I think is valuable, no matter when you think the season's old, because maybe only a few games left in college football, but still a lot of games left in the NFL. And if you're new to us, then why not? Because it's all, how much is that? It's not that we're only talking about $18, something like that, right, Mark?
Yes, right. $17.99. Yes.
Come on. That's nothing when you're somebody, if you're somebody that likes to throw
a couple bucks in the game
a week.
Exactly.
It's why, $20. Come on. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up. We'll talk more with Marc Lawrence. We still have a long way to go here for the rest of the season, and check back with us again next week here, either on the Our Lads Football YouTube channel, and also you could check us out over on the Playbook Experts channel, or also ProLine as well. So, Mark, appreciate your time as always.
My pleasure as always, Greg. Have a great week.